The Bold Little Tailor. One hot summer's morning, a little tailor sat sewing a shirt by the open window of his shop. He was a very ordinary little tailor, and he led a very ordinary life. But he was always dreaming of fame and adventure. One day, he said to himself, I'm going to make my mark in the world. The mere thought of adventure made him feel quite hungry, so he cut himself a chunk of bread and spread it thickly with strawberry jam. Taking a huge bite, he put the bread and jam down beside him and went on sewing. Just then, a swarm of bluebottles flew in through the window and made straight for the jam. "Buzz off!" shouted the little tailor, and picking up the shirt, he gave a mighty flick. Instantly, 7 fat flies lay dead on the floor. "What a feat!" he cried. 7 at one blow! The world must hear of this." So taking up his needle and thread, he embroidered on his belt the words, 7 at one blow. "Perfect," he said. "Now I'm off to make my fortune." And he packed some bread, cheese, and a soft-boiled egg in his bag and hurried off. The little tailor had not gone far when he found a tiny sparrow tangled up in a thorn bush. Freeing the bird, he put it gently in his pocket and walked on. A few hours later, he was striding along a winding mountain road when he suddenly bumped into the toe cap of a huge shoe. Looking up, he saw a terrifying giant glaring down at him.
"You walked into me,"
roared the giant.
"I've a good mind to stamp on you, you miserable little nobody."
"Well, giant, I'm sorry I bumped into you," said the little tailor, "but you shouldn't leave your big foot in my way." And he stood defiantly, with his hands on his hips, so that the giant could see the writing on his belt.
7 at one blow,
read the giant.
"I don't believe it. You're such a little fella. But if you really are so strong, let's see you do this."
And he picked up a boulder in his giant hand and squeezed it until his knuckles cracked. The rock shattered into dust, and the giant sprinkled it carelessly over the ground. "That's easy," said the little tailor, and pretended to hunt around for a stone. But when the giant was not looking, he took the egg from his pocket and closed his hand around it. The yolk oozed through his fingers as he crushed the egg in his fist.
"Ha!"
said the giant, pretending to be unimpressed.
"I bet you can't throw a stone as far as I can."
And he picked up another boulder and hurled it down the mountainside. "Easy," laughed the little tailor. But instead of picking up a stone, he slipped the bird out of his pocket and released it into the air. Up it soared, high into the sky, and disappeared into the branches of a distant wood. The giant whistled with admiration, then invited the little tailor home to meet his giant brothers.
"Just help me carry some firewood, will you?"
he said, pulling a massive oak tree out of the ground with his bare hands. "All right, giant, you take the trunk, and I'll carry the branches." But when the giant had tucked the trunk under one arm, the little tailor hopped up into the branches. He let the giant carry the whole tree all the way to the door of his mossy mountain cave.
"I'm putting my end down now,"
shouted the giant. "All right, I'm setting down the branches," said the little tailor, jumping to the ground. The giant and his brothers gave the little tailor a splendid meal and a big bed to sleep in. But the mattress was so lumpy that he just could not get to sleep. So he got up and lay on the floor beneath the bed. On the stroke of midnight, the little tailor was suddenly woken by the sound of the giant's voices.
7 at one blow. We'll give him 7 at one blow."
And they all raised their clubs and smashed them down savagely onto the mattress. Curled up under the bed, the poor little tailor was afraid to make a sound. Then the giants went away, and his courage returned. When they were safely tucked up in their beds and fast asleep, he burst into their room, drew himself up to his full height, and putting his hands on his hips, shouted, "So, you thought you could kill me, did you? I, who have killed 7 at one blow?" The giants woke with a start, and were so terrified to find the tailor still alive that they leapt out of bed, ran out of the cave, and were never seen again. The local people were so pleased that the giants had gone that news of the tailor's exploits soon spread throughout the land. Even the king read about the giant slayer. "If he can kill 7 at one blow," thought the king, "then he can easily kill those 2 ogres running riot in the royal forest.
Bring him here, and I'll make him commander of the army."
3 days later, the little tailor led the king's army to the edge of the royal forest. Then he took off his jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves, and marched into the forest alone. The 2 ogres were lying fast asleep under a tree in the middle of the forest. When the little tailor found them, he filled his pockets with stones and climbed into the branches above them. Then he dropped the heaviest stone onto the chest of the biggest ogre.
"Who do you think you're hitting?"
growled the ogre to his friend.
"I never touched you,"
yawned the other, and promptly fell asleep again. Then the little tailor dropped a stone onto the other ogre.
"What are you hitting me for?" grumbled the ogre. "I said I never touched you."
Then the tailor dropped another stone onto the first ogre. With a furious grunt, he stumbled to his feet and dragged the other ogre up by his braces.
"That's twice you've hit me, you brainless ox." "Oh, I didn't hit you," bellowed the second ogre.
"Of course you did," roared the first, and they ranted and raged and swung their arms around like the sails of windmills. Then one tore up a tree to use as a club, and the other grabbed him round the waist and pulled him to the ground. Far away at the edge of the royal forest, the soldiers could hear terrible banging and roaring. They trembled to imagine the state of the bold little tailor. But at dusk, the forest fell silent, and a clear voice rang out, "You can come in now, men. I've finished with these weedy ogres of yours." And when the soldiers found him, the little tailor was standing in triumph, with 1 foot on each ogre. The fame of the bold little tailor spread like wildfire. But when the king heard the news, he began to be afraid of his giant killer. What if he should decide he wants my crown? He thought. Nobody could stop him. He decided to send the tailor to certain death. "I want you to capture the ferocious unicorn which has killed so many of my best soldiers. Of course, if you bring it home alive, I'll give you half my kingdom, and you can marry my daughter." "No problem, your majesty," said the little tailor, and taking an axe and a coil of rope, he set out alone to capture the unicorn. It was twilight when he reached the wood where the unicorn lived. Stepping softly through the undergrowth, he could see nothing at first. But then he heard a menacing scrape of hooves on the forest floor. And suddenly, from behind a huge stone, the unicorn appeared. With a hideous whinny, the ferocious beast lowered its head and began to charge. Closer and closer it galloped, its long, sharp, twisted horn gleaming in the last rays of sunlight. At the very last moment, the little tailor jumped aside, and the unicorn thundered straight into a sturdy oak tree. Its horn stuck fast in the trunk. The ferocious animal struggled for an hour, but finally gave in. Then the little tailor chopped the wood away from the horn, tied the rope round the unicorn's neck, and led it slowly back to the palace. It is hard to say now which horrified the king more, the sight of the bold little tailor, safe and sound, or the sight of the fearsome unicorn standing quietly in the courtyard. But he had to keep his promise. He gave him half the kingdom, and the tailor married the king's daughter. After 7 years, they had 7 sons, and when the old king died, the bold little tailor ruled over the land for the rest of his days, without anybody troubling him.